everyone, it is me, Rob, with a video response for today. Today is going to be a response to a post made by Juce from Master the Game, good friend of mine, who we both have this shared passion of gaming, but we do have different role-playing philosophies, and quite honestly, video philosophies. So in this case, I'm going to tackle his post. He put up a response to a tweet which was sent out by No Nat Ones. And while I'm not familiar with who No Nat Ones really is or anything like that, the post effectively said players should feel free to make any kind of characters they want, and it's the Game Master's job to tailor the adventure around the choices the players make so that they can enjoy whatever it is they really want to play. So that's the whole concept, is that if the whole party, for example, doesn't want to make a spellcaster, everybody wants to play a fighter of some sort, it's the Dungeon Master's job to make sure that they are able to competently play their characters and not, feel for a want of something. So no healers in the group, no problem. Don't throw heavy damage monsters at the group, and make sure there's plenty of healing potions. No spellcasters or crowd control, no problem. Just throw large, big blocks of hit points at the party so that their tankiness can help to resolve it without really feeling for a want as hordes and hordes of lesser creatures smother them. No rogue in the group or anybody with any kind of trap sense or unlocking door abilities. No problem. Just don't throw traps, don't throw locks, no locked doors, no locked chests, things like that. And there's certainly something that can be said for that. Some game masters probably embrace that philosophy of tailoring things to the party's composition. Juce did not think so. Juce thinks that that is basically coddling the players. As he said repeatedly, you don't want to play with kid gloves. The players will feel their experience is cheapened, and they can tell when you're holding back. So if you make the world more suitable for them, they'll know that they were robbed of something, you giving them all that you have. And it even drifted into other aspects too, but for the most part we're going to stick to the concept here. And I listened to it, of course, and he did bring up some interesting elements. And my response is, and this may not surprise you because it fits in with my game philosophy quite well, it depends. It depends on your group, it depends on the makeup within, and getting to the point where everybody is having fun. Some people really hate traps, for instance. They really don't like them. They think that they're kind of dumb. In all of history, yes, humans have made traps, and there are situations where people have made fiendishly diabolical traps and things. But over the course of real history, they're not as common or as, intricate as, some people really go out of their way to make traps in their fantasy games. The earliest examples of traps in dungeons were there because the DMs wanted to really make something that could either grind up a character to a pulp or, make them impressed with how complex this trap is, or, all these different elements to trap making. Very little of it was actually a good, solid idea of this was here for this purpose, with an idea of who created it, to what end. It was there basically to throw an extra wrinkle at the party, an extra challenge, whittle down their resources, possibly kill a careless player or two. And for the most part, that has evolved. More and more traps now, I find, in adventures do tend to tell a narrative. They do tend to be there because it makes sense that the person who created the dungeon or created the lair or whatever would have a trap there. And quite honestly, traps have been around for so long that a lot of groups have a set standard procedure for everything from traps to doors, to even just going down a corridor. So, by and large, something like traps can be just a pain if you don't like them, but a lot of them are accepted. Now, the idea of, say, taking it easy on groups that purposely don't want to have a healer. Nobody decided to take a healing class, or even a class that offers any kind of healing. And in Dungeons and Dragons, there are, several classes that at least have access. Bards have access to. Druids, clerics, clearly. Paladins, yes. Rangers, yeah. So, there's 5 solid classes. If somebody's going to be playing one of those classes, you got a good shot. But if everyone's playing monks and fighters and wizards and sorcerers and warlocks, you can see where that kind of comes to be a little bit of a problem in some groups. Especially if your game is tailored on smashing combat into the players again and again. And his argument is that the group can always just run away. The group should learn caution if they can't just heal injuries with a wave of the hand and a quick spell. And I can certainly see that perspective. But here's the thing. Different groups like different challenges. Some groups really don't like a lot of challenge at all. They're interested in telling a story. That's all they want. They want to tell a story. They want to say the cool things, and they want to do some cool things. And they don't want a game to be a tactical exercise. That's fine. I've said this before. Lots of room at the table for all different perspectives. But that does become complicated when somebody's like, okay, we're going to run Teagle Manor. Ooh, that's going to be a challenge if you really are into the narrative. Not that there isn't an interesting narrative. I've had Teagle explain to me. It sounds like there's some interesting elements inside of it. But, there's a but, combat light it ain't. You gotta, there's fighting elements in almost all of the old classic adventures. You're going to go through this room, and in this room there is a fight. There's just no getting around it. Your character can role play to the hilt. You can be a Shakespearean theater-trained actor. And they're going to come at you with their swords and chop you into, bardic stew. If, because that's how this particular challenge plays out in this adventure. Now, if the game master doesn't tailor it and your group of well-meaning, thespians goes in and runs it as written, somebody's not going to have a great time. And ultimately, it is the job of the game master to try to make sure that everybody, including themselves, are having a good time, are having fun. It's a game. We're all supposed to be having fun here, right? So, first of all, if somebody's fun comes at the expense of somebody else, that's unfortunate, because that's going to preclude somebody from having fun of that situation. So if you're a game master and just love turning characters into hash and, getting a high body count and your players aren't into that, you're not going to be thrilled with that. Try to find other joys in life. But, yeah, if your players are all like, okay, we want to play characters that are not really optimized for combat. We just want to role play our way through. And you're sitting there and you're looking at something like Teagle Manor. You're looking at something like, Caves of Chaos. And there's relatively limited numbers of role-playing opportunities. There's creatures fighting for survival. There are creatures that have very little reason to not attack on sight on players that come into their territory. Just because of the way they are, just because of the circumstances they're in, the kind of desperate circumstance with large monsters looming overhead or hordes of smaller monsters, and you gotta, preserve your territory how you do. Role-playing your way through a scenario like that is challenging, and for some game masters it might not even be an option. That can be a problem for the enjoyment of everybody in that circumstance. So the natural temptation for a game master is to kind of take the player's style into account and go with it. If the players see a pack of, say, the first level party sees a pack of 12 kobolds, and they're chittering at them, and they've got their cute little bows ready, and they've got javelins they're getting ready to throw at the party. And one of the party members steps forward and says, well, hey, I speak Goblin. That's a language that are commonly spoken around here. Odds are pretty good one of these kobolds also understands Goblin, or enough to get by. I'm going to step forward and say, hey, friends, we don't want to fight. Fair, certainly. And will that get them out of a nasty scrape? The game master could always just run as written. I'll roll my roll the reaction roll, see how they do, and oh look, they hate you. All right, they're going to attack, and just plow under. Another kind of game master might go, well, you made the effort. Are you you're approaching with food in hand, and everybody has their sword sheathed because they're all pretty sure they can whip out their swords and start fighting if they need to. But nobody's making any overt threats, and you move forward in an act of friendship. Maybe as a game master, you allow the role play to take over and think, would these kobolds actually attack, or would they see their new big buddies as possibly leverage to get them more power in the region? Maybe. And allow that to go. It's all about your style. It's all about what your expectations are from players and from the game master. There's no one right way to do it. And I always feel cringy inside when somebody says, you should do this. You should not pamper your players. You should run it as written. Can't agree with somebody who says that, because there's too many variables, there's too many different players out there, there's too many game masters with their own styles. There are wrong ways of doing this, yes, doing it in such a way that people at the table aren't having fun. If you go into the Dungeon of 1,000 pit traps and your players hate pit traps, somebody's not having a great time. This is why session zeros are useful. Being able to say, hey, we're going to run Dungeon of 1,000 pit traps, and your players go, I hate pit traps. Don't make us do this with all the 1,000 pit traps. Maybe the game master will go, maybe the 1,000 pit traps are actually a bluff and there aren't any pit traps. Aha, I'll have other challenges instead. Maybe they're like, okay, well, the players have spoken, we're not going to do the Dungeon of 1,000 pit traps, we're going to do Ravenloft instead, or something like that. That's fine. There's no wrong answer if everybody's having fun and, it works out. So, run as written if you want. If the players like that kind of a challenge, they like trying to compensate for what their group doesn't have, great, do that. Enjoy it. It's what it's there for. I mean, the classic days where there are the 4 pillars, we've talked about 4 pillars in gaming. You have your tank, your fighter type, you have your healer, you have your crowd controller / get out of various situations, and then you have your skilled specialist that covers all those areas that you can't swing a sword at or zap with a spell. That was always kind of an assumption that a well-balanced group is going to have that, so most dungeons have challenges for all of those. But if you don't have one of those, it kind of behooves the rest of the group to kind of figure out how you're going to get around that. If you don't have a rogue, for example, in a group, and a trap comes up, yeah, a certain DM might say, well, traps are still not going to just simply not exist because you don't have a rogue. So you're going to have to just deal with this trap. Either you're going to take some initial damage because nobody thought to look, or maybe I'll allow you to bypass it. If you see the possibility for a trap, you explore, detect the trap by observation, rather than necessarily just stumbling on it, and then figure out how to bypass it, not necessarily doing the skilled thing, but maybe if it's a scything blade that comes out of a wall, maybe that's where we put the rod of inertia in front so that when it comes out, it stops. It doesn't hit us. Great! You've outthought that trap, and I would give them all the due props for bypassing and getting around the trap. The trap is a jet of flame that shoots out of the wall. The players know about it, so they crouch down and they crawl underneath the jet of flame, and therefore, even though it triggers, nobody gets hurt because they outthought it. Perfectly fine, you've bypassed that trap, you get credit for getting by it. Fine, there are ways of doing things without having the perfect character with the perfect skills. A lot of times back in the day, we had to make do with characters with very questionable skills. Go check out the stat line for a first level thief back in Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. But if you're going along at a very early level, you're not counting on those skills working most of the time. 10%, 15%, 20% chances, not great. But you keep that thief alive so that eventually their skills get to the point where when you start coming to the lethal traps, they've got a pretty good chance. That's what you're shooting for. But anyhow, any way you slice it, there's too many different ways of playing these days. Too many different players that come in with different expectations and different needs. Too many game masters who have their own styles. Telling somebody, you're doing it wrong because you're not doing it the way I prefer, I can't agree with that at all. Do it the way that makes sense for you and your group. And if, again, you favor that that challenge clash of not having the right skills to just breeze by something, make the players work to get around it. If you enjoy that, fine, enjoy that. And if the players enjoy it, enjoy that, fine. If the players hate that, they hate the feeling that they have to be saddled with a cleric. Now, clerics are awesome, but if they feel that we don't want to make anybody play a cleric and nobody really wants to, and so as a DM you say, oh, well, okay, I'll let them buy healing potions. That's fine. They can rest periodically. Done. 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, if you run it as written, the default, yeah, relatively little need to have a cleric, but they're awfully handy. So you could do this. You could tailor things, or you could let the players work their way around it. You can, but you don't have to. Do it the way it feels good for you. Do it the way that your players enjoy. And you'll pretty much find after a couple of sessions what their tastes are. If they're really not happy with something, they'll let you know. And if they aren't happy with something, yeah, by all means, start thinking about changing it or changing something up, running a different game or something. Because if they're not having fun, then you're failing at running your game. Because it's a big part of it. Big part of it. The video drifted into fudging on rolls too, and I've said it myself. Again, this is a matter for personal opinion. Your tastes may vary. Don't let your players know that you fudge if you do, but if you do, you're not a bad game master. If you absolutely never fudge and your players know it and respect that, great. If your players don't know if you fudge or not and you don't, fine. If you do, fine. As long as the players don't feel like they're, being cheated and they're still having fun with the way that you're running games. If you realize that the narrative is far more important than figuring out that you did just enough damage to drop somebody, or they come through with a harrowing near miss, that's fine, as long as they're enjoying it. So, yeah, this is the no judgment Lair of OmnusI, so that's also my answer. There's no one right way to do it. If you have one side or the other, I'm not going to tell you you're wrong, but you're doing it right for your group, and that's cool. And if your opinion is that everybody should run it a particular way, I'll say that you're wrong just because there's too many other styles out there and too many other people who enjoy playing it other ways. But I'm not going to force it down your throat. Believe what you want. That's fine. Plenty of room. So, I'm Rob, thank you very much, and this has been me in the Lair of OmnusI. The next time I see another video that needs responding to, you can find me here at the Lair of OmnusI. Until next time, thank you for joining me today, and farewell.